Hello there, and welcome to this damn idealistic crusade. This is going to be a Blu-ray review discussing the Masters of Cinema Spine 233 to 235, which is their release of the 3 Universal classic horror films based in and around classic tales of Edgar Allan Poe. So this details Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Black Cat, and The Raven from 1932, 34, and 35, respectively. All 3 star Bela Lugosi, and then the latter 2 films are pairings with Karloff and Lugosi, and all 3 are really horror classics and real touchstones of the golden age of horror at Universal. This is a really lovely release. It does kind of duplicate some of the Shout Factory releases. They've done 6 volumes of classic Universal horrors that are that are not the monster films that are, much more well known and have been released in a complete Blu-ray set of their own. So this takes 3 titles already released by Scream Factory, but actually does it in its own way, and as common for different labels in different countries, the extras will kind of vary even if the transfers themselves are the same source material. So all 3 of these films have been redone and mastered again by Universal in the past few years or so, but only The Raven has a brand new 2K scan. The others are pre-existing masters. So The Raven is a new 2K scan, and again, this is the same stuff you're getting transfer-wise on the Shout Factory releases. Black Cat and The Raven are in Universal Horror Collection 1, and then Murders in the Rue Morgue, for some reason, is a standalone disc, so you will have to buy 2 releases if you want these 3 films in the US. However, if you get this release, you get 2 of the films from Volume 1, but then you won't get The Invisible Ray and Black Friday, which are the other 2 films in that set. So the first volume tried to do all 4 of the Karloff Lugosi vehicles from Universal, and then left out Murders in the Rue Morgue. And I really do like pairing these 3 together because I first saw these films all kind of around the same time period, and since these are all dealing with Poe, I think it is really best to have them programmed together. This is the full-on limited edition first pressing, so when this sells out, which it probably will very soon if it hasn't already, we'll go down to a standard collection version, so it won't have the slipcase, probably won't have the very nice booklet inside either. So you'll probably have this design on the standard actual jacket art. What they've done here is actually given you each of the film's original poster art design as its own made-up Masters of Cinema jacket. So here we have Murders in the Rue Morgue, and then on the rear you have this wonderful shot of Karloff and Lugosi there. And then on the inside, let me slip this out so you can see, on the reversible sleeve you have both the Black Cat and you have both the Black Cat and the Raven in the Masters of Cinema line, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And of course, you can reverse this and have the interior be this if you desire so. So I thought that was a really nice touch that they actually went ahead and made each cover for each film with its own sleeve, so you could display all 3 of them if you wanted to. Now let's get on to this rather lavish booklet. This contains 3 full essay pieces. It runs about 50 pages. It's a rather hefty booklet for a Blu-ray, and if you're familiar with Masters of Cinema releases, their booklets are very well done and usually are nice and hefty like this. So I have a number of MOC discs, and almost always the booklets are, between 20 and 50 pages. So these are extremely well done. You have essays on Lugosi, on the censorship problems that really all 3 of these films face, but particularly The Black Cat and The Raven, which was really the film that helped to institute the British horror ban, which killed off the golden age of horror in the 1930s. And then for me, most important is there is a article, the original article from the Video Watchdog magazine talking about Murders in the Rue Morgue and trying to figure out perhaps what the original shooting version of the film was, because there was some studio meddling done in the post-production process. The film was re-edited, and it's now very well regarded that scenes were shifted around, because there are moments in the theatrical version that are really nonsensical and kind of jarring. And it's now kind of come to light through a lot of research. And this original article and then the further revisions printed in here, that the original version of Murders in the Rue Morgue ran very differently for the first third to the first half of the film. And so there have been several attempts by fans and historians to do a reconstituted version. And it's really, it's part guesswork, but it's also part research. And it's a really impressive thing that when you look at the ideas and you read the threads on the classic horror film board, it makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of the issues you may have had with Murders in the Rue Morgue go away. So it's like, why did they? I mean, I can understand cutting the movie down, but I don't know why they re-edited the first half of it. So it's a really fantastic thing that they did this and printed this in here. But that's not all. There is, we'll talk about this, in the actual transfer itself, but there's a particular thing that Masters of Cinema did that makes this release indispensable, and I think absolutely essential for all classic horror fans. So I'll show you the disc really quick. Murders in the Rue Morgue gets its own disc, and these are all, very short films, a little bit over an hour and 15 minutes or so. And then so The Black Cat and the Raven are paired on a single dual-layer Blu-ray disc. And the encodes on here are fantastic, as always for MOC discs. The extras are great and, well spread out over the disc, so there are no issues with, compression or shoving too many features on the same release. But what they did do, and they didn't advertise this, so the extras are quite extensive, but they actually have included the reconstituted version of Murders in the Rue Morgue to the final specifications, listed here in the revised portion of the essay. So they printed the original Video Watchdog article, and then they printed a further research that had been done. So she could actually, find out more information that's been uncovered since then. So they've actually gone in and included the recut version that tries to bring it back to the original shooting intent of the film. And that in and of itself makes this release indispensable, because there is no official release of the recut version whatsoever. It's entirely been in fan circles and discussed on forums, and people have tried to do it with their own DVD copies and so on and so forth. Shout Factory did not do this at all on their release and didn't really talk about it. It is talked about a little bit in the commentary track on here, which is on the Shout disc as well, but when they put out that single disc version, I was really hoping that meant they would include both versions, but sadly it had that just the theatrical version. So again, the MOC release doesn't indicate this whatsoever. It's not listed on the packaging, and it's actually done as an Easter egg. So you have to actually go in the menu and hit over to the left and actually highlight the title of the film in the menu, and that will play the reconstituted version, which has a completely different opening. It doesn't open with the carnival sequence. That comes much later, which seems to be pretty much how the original shooting draft of the script and how the original production was designed. And when you see this version, or you read the articles, or you look at any of the previous versions of this reconstituted attempt, it really makes Murders in the Rue Morgue make so much more sense. The whole narrative is improved. The flow of the film is improved. The characters' actions actually make more sense, because you can actually tell what they're doing, because it goes logically from one place to another instead of jumping all around. And you also don't have the random insert shots of Lugosi and other things that are clearly from much later in the film pop up at random elements to try and cover up some of the edits that had been made. It really is a drastic improvement in a lot of ways. So the fact that MOC have included it, it really, really, I found it really touching that they went to that level of effort. And I don't know if Universal is aware of this discussion or the Video Watchdog article or anything. But Shout Factory didn't do this at all, which was a great disappointment to me, which is why I didn't pick that release up as soon as it came out. And then this was announced, so I figured I would wait until this came out and then, compare and contrast to see which one I should pick up. And thankfully, somebody found the Easter egg and posted about it on the Blu-ray forums. And as soon as I heard that, it was like, okay, you have me now. I was already going to probably go with this, but that totally sold me. So that is reason enough alone why you need to get this. Even if you have the Shout Volume 1, you need to go ahead and get this. It's worth it for the recut Murders in the Rue Morgue alone. If you've never seen the recut Murders in the Rue Morgue, if you're only a passing fan of it, if you didn't like it the first time, you owe it to yourself as a classic horror fan or a Lugosi fan to get this MOC release, and especially before they sell out of this limited version, which has this nice slipcase and the booklet and everything. But it is worth it for the recut Murders in the Rue Morgue. It is worth the full $30 just for that. It is amazing that it's included here. If it were me, I would put it all over the box. It's like recut Murders in the Rue Morgue, please buy, with a little flashing neon light or something. But it's not even listed in here. So I don't know if maybe it was a thing that Universal didn't want them to do it, or they couldn't advertise it. I don't know. But that's the number one draw to this release, in addition to everything else. So to talk about the extras, just run through those really quick. I have had the chance to go through and look at every extra and listen to all the commentaries. So again, a lot of this replicates what's on the Shout releases of Universal Volume 1 and the standalone Murders in the Rue Morgue, but there are some exclusives here, so I'll go over this whole thing real quick. So again, only The Raven has a new scan. It was scanned at 2K in the credits, but both Murders in the Rue Morgue and The Black Cat are, HD scans. They obviously were just pre-existing. All three films do look great. They do far advance from their DVD counterparts and the old Bela Lugosi collection set, which was on the really annoying DVD 18 that Universal liked to use, the awful flipper disc that always had the lovely habit of wanting to totally go bad on you. So I'm so glad we can finally move away from those. So all that being said, when you look at them, picture-wise, they are films from the 1930s. They have had a lot of wear and tear and abuse over the years, but they're actually far better looking than you realize. So do take it with a grain of salt. That they won't immediately wow you half the time, but the improvements are subtle. They are there. However, even though The Raven has the new scan, the most impressive one is actually Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is no real surprise because that was shot by Karl Freund. It's German Expressionism on steroids. It's heavily influenced by Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but I wasn't surprised because on every format previous to this, it has always looked stunning. The Laserdisc is absolutely gorgeous. The DVD is gorgeous. And now this Blu-ray release is gorgeous. So even though it's an older master, apparently, the element they have is in really nice shape, and the photography just comes across so wonderfully in HD. It's a real treat to see this film in HD. So of the three, I think Murders in the Rue Morgue actually is the best looking of them. The Black Cat looks rather good, but again, it didn't get a brand new scan, and of course the Black Cat was heavily edited and reshot, so there was a lot of post-production work. So I also don't know what sort of elements they have to scan at Universal, so it may also be that their element source isn't the greatest, but it does seem like it is the same thing they used for the Bela Lugosi collection DVD set years ago. And then The Raven is a new scan. I think it does improve over the DVD. It may be a bit more than the Black Cat because it's a new scan, but it is of relatively worn elements. So it does have a little bit of damage here and there. None of these have been, fully painstakingly restored at 4K. They didn't have the same attention paid to them as the classic monster films. But in some ways, that's kind of a good thing because that means there's less room for over manipulation or cleaning the audio too much or things like that. So I don't mind it. A tiny little bit of stuff here and there, some very faint intrusions, which be great if these could get meticulous 4K restorations. But what we have on here is just it's really great and far beyond what was on DVD even. So that's the transfers out of the way. All have lossless PCM mono as well. and English subtitles, of course. Then for Murders in the Rue Morgue, there's a commentary by Greg Bank, who is one of the great commentators. I absolutely adore hearing any of his tracks. As always, he gives a great commentary for Murders in the Rue Morgue. And then he does another one for The Black Cat. And of course, these were originally recorded for the Shout release. You do lose the Steve Haberman commentary track for The Black Cat. So that's one of the things you do lose. You lose that. And also the Shout release had a like 15 or 20 minute documentary piece. I guess it was like maybe originally an hour, but it's broken into 20-minute pieces for each of the 4 films with the great horror historians. So those are the 2 things you mainly miss by getting this MOC disc over getting the Universal Volume 1 from Shout Factory. But everything else carries over. You get a Gary Rhodes commentary on The Raven, really great commentary track there. And then Sam Deegan gives another a secondary commentary for The Raven. And all of these are great listens. I've actually had the chance to actually listen to them. Usually when I review discs and stuff, I try to listen to the commentary tracks before I do a review, but sometimes I only get the chance to sample them because unfortunately there's just not enough time in the day usually. But I've thankfully had the chance to go through these because it's much easier to go through commentary when it's only 75 minutes as opposed to 2 hours or more. Then there's another wonderful Kim Newman piece. He talks about not just these 3 films, but Universal horror in general, the Golden Age, and then how Poe relates into that and how these films, obviously they adapt Poe, but they really have nothing to do with Poe, even though you can make the arguments that sometimes they do actually get to the spirit of Poe. And Newman makes that argument and many others. It's a great piece. I think it's about 30 or 40 minutes, actually. And then when it's over, the time has just flown by, and you're like, I could use another 2 hours of that, please. So always great. And that's exclusive to this MOC release. Then there's a really cool video essay from Lee Gambin about just cats and horror in general, which is a fun piece. Then Kat Ellinger gives a video essay on these films entitled American Gothic. Then there's the episode of the radio series Mystery in the Air, literally doing The Black Cat with Peter Lorre doing it, which is just, absolutely riveting. And of course, a precursor to, Peter Lorre popping up in the Black Cat segment of Corman's Tales of Terror much later in the 1960s. And then you also get 2 different radio versions of both Lugosi and Karloff doing Poe. So you have Karloff doing The Telltale Heart from the Inner Sanctum radio series, and then you have Lugosi doing a reading of The Telltale Heart. And again, it's really cool to be able to compare their different readings of Poe. And obviously, it was done back in the day, so there are. I don't think they're not 100% word for word of the text, but they're pretty close. So it's really cool to see Bela doing Poe and then see Karloff doing Poe and actually doing Poe's text and see how they take Poe's words and interpret it in their own styles. So it's great that you can jump back and forth between the 2. Then there's really cool footage from the Black Cat had this really cute promotional campaign where they had a bunch of kids show up and bring their pet black cats to see which one would be best to star in the film. And ostensibly they did choose one of them, but there are these great stills of Karloff and Lugosi with all these kids and their cats out in the field on a sunny day. And they've actually found footage and included on here. So it's really cool because I've seen some of those stills before, but that was a really cool thing to actually physically see them just kind of interact. And I mean, it's very short, but I'm so glad they included that. Then you get some stills galleries, and then it obviously talks about the booklet, which has 3 essays and a lot of images, and then reprints the original Video Watchdog article about the reconstruction of Murders in the Rue Morgue. Here's the spine for you, so you can see numbers 233 to 235. Again, this is the Masters of Cinema 3 Edgar Allan Poe films from Universal in the Golden Age of Horror. I think this is the definitive package to go for. This is really well put together. A lot of care and attention went into this. I like the packaging very much. The booklet is great. I like the slipcover, so definitely try and get this original pressing before they sell out and you're just with the standard, Blu-ray case. And again, what really sets this apart for me is the fact that it includes the reconstruction of Murders in the Rue Morgue, which I think was a big miss from Shout Factory's release, because that was something I was really looking forward to and hoping for, and it just didn't happen on the U.S. release. So I think that makes this the package to go for these three films. But of course, I really want to get Invisible Ray and Black Friday, so I will probably have to get Shouts Volume 1 anyway. And of course, it has some extras that didn't carry over, the Steve Haberman commentary and those video pieces as well. But that's kind of made up for, because you do get the rest of the other commentaries. You get some new commentaries. You get the Kim Newman piece, which is really fantastic. It's a really nice, lengthy conversation. You get the extra exclusive extras here. So I think this is the way to go for these three films, these three iconic Golden Age horror films from Universal. They're really underrated anyway. And but for classic horror fans, Lugosi and Karloff fans, just in general, this is the version to go for, I think. The presentation is excellent. The only thing I could improve on, if it were me, would be, trying to get all of the extras from the Shout release, just that extra commentary and those interview pieces. And also, again, it'd be great if we could get meticulous 4K remasters of all of these films, but that's just not in the cards at the moment. So for what we have, I think this is the definitive release for these three films to date, and I really hope they do more, because I've loved what they did with these. It'd be really cool to see more of the other Universal horror titles come out in equivalent packages. There haven't been any inklings of this. I keep my fingers crossed, but they are going to do the release of the Inner Sanctum films, which was what Universal did in the 1940s to, in a lot of ways, to maybe try and compete with the Val Lewton films, but it kind of had that only to a certain element. But that's been released by Mill Creek here in the U.S. That's just come out. And then the standard Eureka label, I don't think it's Masters of Cinema, I think it's just standard Eureka, is doing the Inner Sanctums for the UK. So I'm very much looking forward to that coming out and being able to compare it to the Mill Creek release here. And I'm hoping that means Masters of Cinema will do more classic Universal horrors, because this was a beautiful, wonderful surprise. Please go and get this before it sells out. It is absolutely essential for horror nerds, and again, the entire purchase price is worth it alone for the Reconstituted Murders in the Rue Morgue. So this is Masters of Cinema, Spine number 233, 234, and 235, three Edgar Allan Poe films from Universal. Thanks ever so much for watching, guys, and happy Blu-ray hunting.